All right, so today we finished the rudder. This is actually the same day as the work in the last video. So right about here, we've just finished bending those leading edges into place. We're doing a little cleaning up, and we're about to embark on the last major step, which is to fit the lead weight and bend the skins to form the counterweight, counterbalance area of the rudder up there. So there I'm getting the weight out. It's a big chunk of lead. And we're going to hold it temporarily in place to the front of the counterbalance rib there and drill some holes, bend the skin, and mount some nut plates. So that's what you're going to see in this video. Alright, so I've got the skins clecoed to the counterbalance rib and top rib, and I'm placing the hunk of lead that is the counterweight between those two. That piece of lead actually forms sort of the front structure of that counterbalance portion of the rudder there. So you hold it in place, get it all centered up. I'm going to great pains to mark it and measure it and clamp it in place, and then I'll be drilling this bottom hole. So that's done. And then the next step is just hold it in place temporarily with some number 8 screws, any old screws. So I think I'm going to go to my highly organized shelf of screws and things over there, grab some number 8 screws, and just hold it in place temporarily so that I can bend the two flaps of skin over. So the way this works is those two flaps of skin that have been sticking out all this time, they bend over that counterweight and overlap, and you drill holes, and then that forms the front of the rudder there. So that's what I'm doing there, is you put just enough bend to leave a crease. And then you take the whole thing apart and go after it with some blocks of wood and a hammer. So that fun is up next. Ready? A little more? 85 degrees, which to me is just like almost to 90. That's genius, huh? 85 degrees is almost to 90. I bet you not a lot of people knew that before watching this. So anyway, what we've got going on here, and this is pretty much per the plans, I've got the piece of skin clamped between two blocks of wood, right at the place where I formed the crease in the previous step. And then I've got another piece of wood, a third piece of wood that I'm sort of holding and applying pressure to make the bend, and then my wife's hitting it with a hammer. And that works out pretty well. As I said, you're supposed to get it to almost 90 degrees, and so that works out just fine. The other thing, you've obviously got to be careful. You're banging on this thing with a hammer. One of the things you need to be careful about is not letting the skin behind the blocks of wood buckle when you're hitting it with the hammer. And so more on that later. But that's one reason that I'm sort of holding everything and letting my wife hit it really pretty lightly. She's not hitting it very hard, and we just sort of work at it slowly and carefully. And this side goes pretty well. We don't mess anything up, and the bend forms nicely, nice straight line. So the one thing is that it seemed to me like the bend formed a little farther in, farther back than I intended, or than where the crease was. Thinking about it, it's kind of natural because it's going to have a slight radius to it, which is what you want. You don't want a really, really sharp crease there, or it'll be stress on the skin and it could crack. But I start thinking, well, I can take that into account on the next one. I'll make a line a little farther out, and that way the bend will wind up where I want it to be. So that's what I'm doing here, and that's where I run into trouble. So I go ahead and I check it, and we get all set up, and then we start going at it with the hammer again. So here you can see I've discovered my mistake. So the bend formed a little farther out than I really planned on it to. So now I'm thinking, well, okay, no problem. I can I can sort of hammer it in. The one thing you definitely don't want to do is to try and straighten it back out and bend it again, because for one thing, the bend's just going to form in the same place over again, and second thing, you fatigue the skin and pretty good chance of it cracking. But as you can see, what I've done now is I tried to hold it and hit it rather than having my wife help. And sure enough, I buckled the skin a little bit behind the blocks of wood, just like they warn you to be careful not to do. Uh, so luckily it's not too bad. I'm able to actually straighten it out, and it just a little cosmetic thing. You can still see it didn't wrinkle it or crease it. Luckily, it just sort of has a wave to it, which once the skin was riveted, it didn't really it flattened out pretty well. I still know it's there, but it's pretty minor, so no big deal. So what we're doing here is kind of clever, really. Per the plans, we're using a drill bit through the existing hole in the rib flange and weight as a marking tool and that piece of wood my wife was holding as a backer, and you tap on the drill bit and use it to leave a little mark to mark where you're going to drill the holes through the pieces of skin that you folded over. That will go through the nut plates that I'll be installing soon, and that's what's going to hold the whole thing together. So yeah, once those are marked, you actually use tape to sort of pull everything kind of tight together. You can drill through the skin at that point, and then you really sort of work your way up in sizes with the drill bits until you're match drilling through the skins and the lead weight and the rib flanges, all with a drill bit big enough for a number 8 screw. So you also do dimple the skin for a number 8 screw, so that's a pretty big dimple, so that's what I'm doing there with the squeezer. And you put a corresponding countersink in the face of the lead weight that those big dimples are going to sit in, so that's what I'm doing right here. So what I'm doing here is I'm dimpling the holes for the rivets that hold the nut plates to the backs of the flanges of the top rib and the counterbalance rib. These are the nut plates that are going to accept the number 8 screws that hold the weight to the front there, and also sort of close up those front skins. So one thing I'll say about these nut plates, this was sort of the first place in the plans where they really don't hold your hand at all. They just say, install these nut plates, use these rivets. And you're expected to figure out, do I need to dimple? Do I need to countersink? Do I need to dimple the nut plates themselves? What do I do? And you can refer to section 5, which is what I'm doing right there. That's the plans that are open, on the table there. But it doesn't tell you exactly what to do in every place. It tells you, hey, sometimes you may need to countersink, sometimes you may need to dimple. It's not hard, and it was kind of refreshing to be able to sort of figure it out and do the right thing. But, I assume there'll be more places like that going forward, because once you've sort of done something once or twice, they're not going to tell you every single step to do, to install a nut plate, for example. So obviously, before you can dimple a hole, you've got to match drill it in the first place. So I thought I would show the arrangement I used to line up and drill those holes for the nut plates. I just ran a screw through and used a jam nut, mounted the nut plate backwards, so it's on the wrong side there, but that was to drill the holes, and then, flip it over and it lines up just fine. And so now I can go ahead and rivet the nut plates in place and go ahead and, at least temporarily, screw everything together in preparation for marking and drilling one last hole in the front part there for a blind rivet, that when you drill the hole, you try to get lucky and go through an existing hole in the counterweight, which I measured real carefully and managed to do, so that was fine. But the plans say if you don't hit it, then now you've got a new hole, and that's fine too. But anyway, So now I can go ahead and rivet the skins to the top rib and the counterbalance rib. So that'll be the last few rivets in the skin of the rudder. And we'll pretty much complete the rudder.
It doesn't matter, just turn it. All right, that's enough.